Well, hi everyone. We're back here at Massive Late Fee. We've got another celebrity interview for you. I know you guys have been really loving these celebrity interviews, so we try to bring them to you as often as we can. We are joined today by an actor, a writer, stand-up comedian, singer, a real Renaissance man, and a man about town. Dylan Kelley joining us from New Brunswick. How are you doing today, Dylan?
I'm doing well.
So you can see Dylan in a movie you're filming right now called Side Piece. What's that movie about?
So the film is a comedy film, and it's basically about men cheating on their women, and they're trying not to get caught.
Okay, that makes
That's
sense.
bas Yeah, that's basically the short synopsis about it. So it's just a bunch of guys hanging out with each other, and they all have girlfriends, but they all have a side piece. So one by one, the girl catches them one by one, and they're all trying to get out of it together. So it's a funny story.
It's like 10 little Indians instead of being killed. They're being caught cheating.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Um, so you started out in did you start out in acting or did you start out in stand-up comedy?
It's funny you say that. I always start actually I started out writing. I've been
Okay.
writing since I was about 10 years old or so. And then through my writing, I just started writing material based on my own life experiences, and I started using that in comedy, and I started going to open mic nights and stuff like that around town. And then, yeah, it kind of just stuck with me, and then I decided to get into this acting thing. I always wanted to be an actor, but I didn't really know how to get in,
Hmm.
and then I kind of got in. So,
Um, did you now when you started? I know a lot of stand-up comedians they talk about how rough it is when you first start out. Now, did you when you started out? Did you have a lot of rough crowds? Did you bomb a lot, or did you find success early on?
um, well, people never really, I was never bombed out. I I certainly did. I think it was pretty good for the first time. I mean, it was hard for me because I was nervous. I'm like, well, I don't know how to make people laugh because, I mean, in real life, wherever that is, um, I can't get up on a stage and tell a joke. I'm usually funny through speech or when I'm talking to someone or I have to think of something quick. It just comes out naturally. I don't try to force it out
Hmm.
because people who try to force being funny, they're usually not funny. So it just comes out naturally. And then I decided to take the natural things that I say and write them down, and then it became material that I would say on stage
Gotcha.
like that. But no, I was never bombed. I think for the first, I was pretty successful, yeah.
Well,
But then you have
that's
those
definitely good.
crowds of people who are, jerks or something.
Oh, oh
So,
yeah, yeah. The have you ever done any acts on the West Coast? Because I know the New York audience can be different than the West Coast audience as comedy goes.
that's very true. I have never done any comedy work on the West Coast. I've been to the West Coast, but I've never done any comedy on the West Coast. Um, I would love to. I mean, if there's any opportunities in the future, sure, if it pays well, why not? But no, I've never been in the West Coast. But yeah, you're right. Most people on the East Coast are very serious and they're very, oh, life is rough. But people on the West Coast, sorry, they're all high all the time and they're all happy and oh, it's sunny out. So it always rains over here. It's always sunny there.
Um, so now I know you've been on several television shows.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, including Blue Bloods on CBS. You've been on a few episodes of that. What's it like to be on the set of a studio or not a studio but a network television show like that? How does that
Primetime show like that. Yeah.
yeah? How does that differ from say some of the more independent movies that you work on?
Well, I would say My very first show that I got booked for, that I got hired for, was for Blue Bloods. That was my very first thing I ever did, and it was just so surreal. I mean, I remember being on the set, and I didn't think anything of it, and I tried to fit in, and I didn't fit in, but I tried to stay away from the idea of not fitting in, and then it was all right. But then as soon as I saw Tom Selleck come outside from a shoot, I looked at him and he looked back at me, and then he walked past me within, like, he was like 3 feet away from me, and I could smell the cologne as he walked past me. And it was just so, that was like that was my moment when I'm like, wow, I'm really here. It didn't hit me until I smelled the cologne as he walked by, but it
That's a
was just so real.
that's a local connection for us too. Tom Selleck from the Detroit area famously wore that Tigers cap when he was in Magnum PI. So
Yes, he did. My
yeah,
mother's a huge fan.
oh yeah, my mom was too for sure. Uh, so you've been in several different films. You're filming a horror film right now. Can you tell us anything about that film?
Well, I'm not filming it yet. We're working on it. It's in pre-production right now, but I can't give any information on it yet because I'll get in a lot of trouble
Right,
for that.
hush, hush. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's something that we can look forward to down the line. Um, you're writing an autobiography about your life, sort of a comedy autobiography dealing with several different issues. You said you started out writing, so it makes sense to move to an autobiography like that. What what kind of inspired you to begin this project?
Well, um, I always was writing. I've been writing since I was 10 years old. I would write little horror stories myself. I've always been a huge horror fan. Um, so I always wrote little stories. I wrote a story pretending like I was on the Titanic and like I was on the boat when it was sinking, and I made up characters and stuff like that. And I've always kind of done that. And then I'm like, well, let me write an autobiography. And then I was like, well, I don't know. I'm not 70 years old. I'm not Betty White or anything like that. And most people, old people write, autobiographies, they're like, oh, well, I was born in, 1940 in, the upcountry, and it was just, it was terrible. We didn't have any money, and we were poor, stuff like that. So I knew I didn't want it to sound like that. I didn't want it to be boring and plain and simple or whatever. So I decided, well, let me do it my way and my own little twist. And I had a issue, small little issue, more like seven. But I went into like a rehab. I was in a rehab, and when I was there, they were telling us to talk about our life stories. Like, well, how did you get here? And it's pretty obvious why I'm there. But so I did, and I started writing every day. I was there for about 3 weeks. So, like 21 days I was there. So every day I would write what happened. I would like, day one, this is what happened. This is what I saw. This is who I met. And it kind of became like a little book thing. And when I was there, I did see all these interesting things that had happened. There was this like 70-year-old woman who had a crush on me. She wanted to have sex, and she saw me talking to another female there who was more my age, and she got upset. So she walked over to me one morning and she dumped what I had hoped was orange juice over my head. And then she threw a chair at the lady and she called me a cheater and she called her a slut or something like that. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on.
Yeah, you can
Uh,
you can say that.
so yeah, that was really exciting for me. That was an experience. Another girl had a seizure while she was smoking a cigarette. Interesting things like that. I'm a advocate for mental health. I struggled with drug addiction and mental health issues myself, so I wanted to write a book about that and my own life experiences. I was adopted. my mother was a prostitute and my father was basically a male prostitute, stuff like that. And then I came to the United States when I was a baby, um, grew up, sort of, uh, but not before making a lot of mistakes, which I did. You know, did drugs and I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had a lot of terrible times in other moments. I've dealt with death, and so it takes all these terrible things. I'm bipolar. I'm bipolar 2. There's two types of bipolar. There's bipolar 1 and 2, and if correct me if I'm wrong, bipolar 2 is the less severe form of bipolar disorder. There's like I'm super bipolar, and then there's I'm just a little bipolar. So I fall under the little bipolar category, but I'm extremely. I also have a PD or panic disorder, and so that's what I had that severe. I have really bad anxiety attacks all the time. They come out of nowhere, the paranoid thoughts, stuff like that. So I've been fighting that for a long time. So I wanted to write about that, but I made it comical instead. Um, because what am I gonna do? Sit there and say, "Oh, my life is terrible. I have such a miserable life." No, no, no. You know, I'm not gonna sit there and dwell on the past. It's not acceptable. So I might as well take these bad situations and turn them into something that someone might actually want to read, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So now being bipolar too, and having panic disorders, obviously, a lot of people that suffer through panic disorders, that just daily life can be a struggle, especially dealing with bipolar disorder on top of it. Um,
You're kidding. Oh my God, I didn't even know that. Oh my God, they didn't tell me. Why didn't they tell me that? Had I known that, no, of course. Yeah, it's a huge struggle. Um, if there's something I could tell people how to deal with it or how to handle it, it would just breathe, really. And if you can't breathe, well then, I'm sorry, but uh try not to breathe then. I don't know. But you just got to go through life funny. Everything is funny. If you don't find the humor in things, then there's no point of living now, is there?
right, exactly. But how does the inside? I mean, there's two sides of it. Obviously, you dealing with stuff like this can be a struggle. It can also give you insight into different things, and insight is so important in both acting and writing. So, how does the insight that you get from going through the things that you've gone through, how does it inform you as an actor? How does it inform how you go about the process of preparing for a role and doing a role?
I take usually whatever I'm feeling and I try and put that in that role. And acting isn't always being able to relate to a character that you're portraying. Professional acting is certainly uh, playing a role that you know, never thought you could. Um, so that's what I try to do. I try to take how I'm feeling or my anxiety and uh, my depression or whatever it is, and I try to put it in the character. I always wanted to be a funny actor, like work on like funny films, like Ben Stiller or something. He's like a funny actor. He does comedies, or Steve Martin, or well, Tom Hanks does both. He does comedies and he does serious films. But stuff like that. I wanted to do funny things, and then I realized I guess I'm more funny, like I said, in my writing. My humor comes out through my writing and through my just talking, really. But a lot of directors and producers, they all think of me as a serious actor, more of an emotional character. And I guess that's true from a certain slant. I think my personality comes out mostly when I'm acting, and then I'm very in the zone, very serious, and you know. So I guess, yeah, that's what I do.
Do you find it therapeutic? Is acting therapeutic for you, or do you think Is it a trigger for anxiety? Being in front of the lights and all the people, or would you say it's more therapeutic for you?
Both,
Okay.
both. Um, I from some aspects of it, of course, it's therapeutic. But if I'm doing something for too long or I start overthinking in my head, then I get anxiety on the set and I have to take a break. And, it's hard for me, especially in that business. Everything costs money in this business. Everything is time and money. So, I can't always take a 5-minute break, but sometimes I really have to calm down, go for a walk, uh, have a smoke, whatever. Um, so, but yeah, I think writing is more therapeutic for me. Uh, Acting is a job. It's a fun job. Um, and I think if you can find anybody, whether it's working on a farm or being a singer or working at a Costco, whatever, or an actor, I mean, if you find a job that you love and you can get paid for it at the same time, I think that's a good way to live life. I mean, I'm an actor. That's my job title. That's what I love to do, and I get a paycheck for it at the end of the day too. So I think that's a nice way to live life. But writing is definitely how I get my emotions out. Because once it's on paper, I feel like it's no longer in my head, and then it can't hurt me anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to those kind of mental issues. I know there's increased awareness with panic disorder. People share their stories a lot, on social
Absolutely.
media and things like that. And
Well, you just
definitely,
saw it with Demi Lovato. I
yep.
mean, she's a huge, she struggles with mental illness and drug addiction. I mean, I'm a fan of hers. Robin Williams, I was a huge fan of his, and
Hmm.
he struggled with mental illness. Carrie Fisher, Carrie Fisher and I have had a very similar life in certain areas. I'm a huge fan of Carrie Fisher's because we've had a very similar life. Let's see, who else? Rue McClanahan, the Golden
Hmm.
Girl, the one that played Blanche. She suffered from really bad anxiety too. I mean, she was older, granted, but I try and see who do I relate to. I mean, I never compare myself to anyone. I'm Dylan, that's who I am. I'm Dylan Kelley. Just because I happen to have similar life experiences that someone else had does not mean I'm them or that make them me. I'm me, but I try and see it makes me feel like I'm not alone if I can
Yeah.
say, oh, well, this person was in my field in my business and they had this mental problem. Or this person was in my field and they were addicted to this drug. Oh, great. I was addicted to this drug. Tell me about it. Stuff like that. So, but yeah, I always felt a close bond to these some of this uh fellow coworkers, I should say.
Hmm.
Um, well, these other stars, I always felt a close bond to them because I could relate to them. We all shared the same kind of mental health issues. We all did drugs. I mean, I'm I'm gonna be 22 years old in 2 weeks, and I'm 3 years sober now. So, that's a huge accomplishment. That's the biggest
Absolutely.
accomplishment I've ever made in my life. And I'm engaged. I'm engaged. I'm getting married. So I have a lot.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I have a lot of exciting things going on, but I'm between heaven and hell. That's what I can say my life is. Um, a lot of days I wake up in a great mood. Life is great. Life is so exciting. And then other days I'm in a very, very dark place.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people can relate to that as well. Now, you said that you moved here when you were a baby. From where did your parents immigrate?
I moved here. So the people who gave birth to me
Hmm.
were from the country of Bulgaria, which
Oh,
is in Europe.
yep.
Yeah, it's right by Greece, Romania, Turkey, in that area. And so they lived there, I guess. I mean, I don't know what they did, but the people who brought me, who adopted me, they're American. They were both born in New York, in Long Island.
Hmm.
My mother's from Huntington, New York, and my father was too, actually. So they're
And
both from Huntington.
and you said that you both your parents worked in the sex trade in New York. What
No, 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 not the parents who adopted me. My birth parents.
Oh, okay. All right.
I did some research when I was a little bit younger, and I found out that the parents who. So when I say that, when I say my parents, I'm talking about the ones who adopted me.
Gotcha.
When I say the people who gave birth to me, those are not parents. You have to earn that title of
Right.
being a parent, I believe. You gave me life, sure, but you didn't raise me, you know. So, I mean, they're not my parents. They're just someone who gave birth to me. The people who gave birth to me, those were the prostitutes. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, and so then you were adopted, brought here to the United States. Um, and do, at, at what point did you at what point did you find out that you were adopted?
My mother never hid it from me. She always told me early on. I think I was about 4 or 5 when I found out, and it didn't really bother me because I didn't know, you know.
Hmm.
But then when I was about 8 or 9 years old, it kind of really hit me that it was, and then it started to bother me. It bothered me for years, you know, that maybe I was never really loved or I never really was wanted by someone, you know, and then I started to hate them for it, like it was their fault. But you know, I have to give the prostitutes a little bit of credit where it's due. Because the woman who gave birth to me, she could have easily aborted me or swallowed me for that matter. But she didn't. She cared about me enough to carry me full term. And well, I was actually born a month early, but she carried me full term and gave me to someone who or gave me off in hopes that uh, someone who could actually take care of me would do. Um, you know, and she didn't have to do that. So she carried me for 8 months, and she knew she couldn't take care of me, so she gave me to someone who she knew could. I guess in some from a certain slant, I guess that's love in some area.
Yeah, I think now I'm not adopted. It's I think it's easy to have this philosophy from the outside in. So obviously, I can't relate to what it's like to be adopted. But I always sort of thought that the best way to look at it was that children who were adopted were chosen. So in a lot of ways,
I
y-
am the chosen one.
exactly,
But
exactly.
actually, I was not chosen. My parents didn't get to choose who they brought home. When they went to the orphanage company, it was called Spence Chapin.
Hmm.
It exists all over the world, but there's one in New York. And so the agency was Spence Chapin, and when they got there, they didn't get to choose. They didn't even get to see the kids. The people at the front desk or wherever the hell it was, showed them a picture, and the picture happened to be of me. And they weren't, you know, they weren't picky of, oh, we want a boy or we want a girl or and we want them to have this color. They weren't like that. They just wanted to have a child because my mother had, you know, like 4 miscarriages, so she couldn't. And they just wanted to give a child a happy life who needed it. So they didn't really care who they brought home. They just wanted a child, and I happened to be the lucky one. So they didn't. I was not chosen.
When so now, okay, so we're at your early life. You talked about drugs. At what point did that start to become a problem for you?
Well, you know, I always kind of felt like sort of a social outcast. I was always the odd one. I was always the weird one, whether it was me struggling with my sexuality or whatever it was. You know, I had something terrible happen to me when I was a child. So that kind of messed me up mentally in regards to my sexuality. I did figure it out later on in life. That's why I'm getting married now to a woman. But I mean, when I was younger, I did struggle with that, and so I was an outcast. I would be in, the locker room and I would look at the other guys or, but I would look at women too. I was very, very confused. And I was always the weird one. I wasn't mentally up there as the other kids were, I should say. I felt like I was kind of slow. I was still, let's say they were 13 or 14 or 15 and I was watching, and they would watch like, more adult shows. I would still be watching cartoons or something like. I was always more slow than the others.
Mm-hmm.
And then but I wanted to fit in. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to fit in, but I also always wanted to be an actor. So I was really good at pretending to be something I wasn't. So I acted like everyone else. And then I did get my wish. I did fit in eventually. I became the popular kid and I started doing drugs. It started out with drinking. When I was about 12 years old, I started drinking. And then by the time I was 15, I was smoking pot. And then by the time I was 17, I was taking pills, painkillers, Percocets, or benzodiazepines like Xanax, or Klonopins, or Ativan, anything I could get my hands on. I
Mm-hmm.
did cocaine for a while. And then around the time I was 18 is when I graduated high school. And then when I was 19, I really hit rock bottom because I noticed everyone around me, all my classmates, all the people I graduated with, all my friends, they were a little bit older than me, but or some were older, some were the same age, but they kind of stopped doing the drugs. They kind of stopped partying as much, and they kind of relaxed. They were getting jobs, they were having girlfriends, they were, starting to live the life of an adult. And I was still in this, no, come on, let's go, yeah, let's, get fucked up and party and, you know, do all that stuff. So then it became a problem. And then in October of 2016, I thought I was dying. I had a really bad psychotic mental breakdown due to my bipolar disorder, and I also realized that the I smoked pot, but the pot was laced with what was it? I think it was a stardust or whatever they call it, some kind of it was like dust, angel
Angel
dust.
dust, yeah.
Yeah, it was laced with that, and it really fucked me up, and I was hospitalized for that. Um, and it messed with I guess my moods doing the drugs, and I was on Xanax at the time. It was very, very bad, and I completely lost my mind, and I was in the hospital for like not that long, but I was in there for 3 days. They had to stabilize me with medications, and then after that, I had an overdose a few months after that. I had a drug overdose at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. I had an overdose. I was taking uh, I think it was 15 of the 15 pills of Xanax, and it wasn't the low dose either. It was the highest dosage available. The 2 milligram bars, we call them. They call them in street terminology. They call them bars.
Mm.
Um, so I was taking about 10 to 15 of those in one sitting, and then I would, chug a bottle of, wine on top of that or something, or whatever I could get my hands on.
Right.
So I had the overdose, and I passed out in the hospital, and then I fell down in the street, and then someone brought me I woke up in the hospital, and they had to do a trachea rub or something. I wasn't responding to touch or sound, so they had to like a sternum rub really, really hard. And when I woke up, there was like 5 or 6 doctors all standing arounding me, and they said I did overdose, but I was in the process of overdosing because you can be drunk or whatever, and if someone says hey or splashes cold water on your face, you wake up. And I've spent most of my teenage years more than slightly shit-faced, and I've never had a problem with waking up before, but I did then. And they told me that I had overdosed, but it wasn't a severe overdose, but it didn't matter. The point is I overdosed, and I would have died if I wasn't in the hospital. And then I went into rehab for the 3 weeks, and that's when I started writing about my experiences. Then I got out of rehab, did it again, overdose, then not overdose, but I fell back into drugs. But that time I checked myself into rehab the second time. And then, I've pretty much been sober ever since. I mean, I have an occasional drink. alcohol was never really my problem. It was more like pills. Pills were always my problem. I
Hmm.
loved taking, I loved benzos. I loved painkillers and I loved benzos. And I loved uh marijuana and stuff like that. But I never really drank. So now today, 3 years later, I can have, a few glasses of wine or a few beers and not abuse it. But because I abused my powers to be altered, I suffer now from the really bad anxiety and stuff. Ever since I had the hospitalization from the angel dust, uh, my body's never been the same. I have really bad anxiety since that. It's never gone away.
And when did you start acting? You said that Blue Bloods was kind of the first thing that you did. When was that?
That was my first professional. I started acting professionally about a year and a half ago, two
Okay.
years ago. I'll just say 2 years ago. And but I've always been acting. I acted in high school. I, was in a few plays in middle school. I was in the theater class in high school for 4 years.
Hmm.
I took a class in college for acting for 3 weeks until I dropped out after I met my ex-girlfriend. And so, I've always acted. I've always been sort of an actor. And I've never taken an acting class. I've never taken an acting class. That's an interesting thing. Never had to study for it. Someone once told me that I have a gift for it. I'm like, oh, okay, great, thanks. I didn't believe what he was saying, but whatever. But he did tell me, a director said, you have a gift for this. You should, if you're serious about it, you should stick with it. I said, okay. So, and here I am. So I'm really digging it. It's kind of cool.
Do you
But I
kind
do
of
like,
do you kind of look at this, your professional acting career and everything as sort of like almost like a rebirth, coming from where you came from and going through all the things that you went through with the the drugs and the overdoses and things like that. Do you kind of look at it that way, or do you look at it more as a continuation, or how do you view that?
not at all. I think of acting as a job, and that's all it is. It's a job. It's a job I love to do. You know what my rebirthing is? Sobriety.
Hmm.
That is me. That's my rebirthing. Having a fiance, um, you know, having someone who truly loves me, which is hard for me because I never really had someone that did. So, and I'm young, and you know how it is when you're young. I'm 22 years old. People just want to fuck and party, and that's it. But I already did all that. I did all the partying and the drugging and the sexing and all that stuff when I was younger. All my friends were older than me, so I'm all partied out now. I did all that when I was younger, so now I'm ready to kind of settle down in a sense. But no, acting has nothing to do with it. See, I'm very have you ever heard the expression "a lion never says he's a lion"?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. I mean, you know, it is. It's just a job. I love it, but I don't let it get to my head.
Hmm.
Um, if stardom happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life because it makes me happy. Um, but no, my sobriety is what got me to be rebirthing. I'm not in over my head like a lot of people are. A lot of people want acting for the wrong reasons, and you know, you know how people are. They want it all for the same. Oh, I want to be an actor. I want to be famous. I want to be rich. And that's the wrong reasons to do it. You know, no one's gonna people. I'm not gonna say no one's gonna hire you because look at the Kardashians. They're not famous for anything. You know, but I mean, it's a business. It's show business. It's a business. Um, so it's about making money. Yes, that's part of it. But you can't be don't be crazy in that sense. Don't feel entitled. No one is entitled to anything. You have to work for everything you have in life. You have to work for it, and you have to earn it. You know. And this business is a very hard business to get into. It's a lot of disappointment, a lot of people that tell you you're not good enough, or a lot of people that lie to your face, and it's very hard. But you got to keep pushing. And I'm a survivor, so I mean, I'm gonna keep on I'm gonna keep on pushing along.
So what for you? And the answer might be nothing, but what for you do you think would be your kind of perfect path as far as where you take your career, whether it be stand-up comedy or acting or writing? Where would you like to see yourself go as far as that goes?
My writing is very private. My writing is in my head, and when it comes to writing, there's no director or producer that can say, "No, you do it, but you have to do it this way,"
Hmm.
or "No, do it this way." I do it my way, and so I really enjoy that. But I would have to say acting, because my goal is to, like I'm telling you now, it's to get my life story out there and to stop the stigma that surrounds mental illness and stuff, and any kind of situation like that, any kind of mental illness. People don't understand it. People frown upon it. So I mean, if I have to, my goal is to change the world, like everyone else's goal is to do the same thing in this business. But my goal isn't necessarily, if I don't change the world, it's at least to leave a message. When I die, I want to leave a message that, you can be anything you want to be. You can do anything you want as long as you fight for it and you believe in yourself, then you can do literally anything. And if people might tell you no, but as long as you say yes, it's gonna happen. Just give it time. Everything will fall into place. And that's what this career is for me. Acting is a way for me to get my story out there to people who want to hear about it. I do it through singing. I do it through writing. I do it through my comedy, but I do it sitting down because I don't like to stand. But no, but yeah, yeah, it's just to help others. That's my life's journey. I I'm not gonna say I'm a huge religious person, but I certainly believe in God, and I know what my destiny is in life, and it's to leave a message for Earth, and it's to help others believe in themselves and know they can fix anything that's wrong. It just takes time, and that's what I'm here for.
Well, I think that's I think that you couldn't ask for a better legacy than that. As far as I'm concerned. But that is Dylan Kelley. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Anyone
Thank
who is
you.
interested, and we'll link all this below. You can find Dylan on Instagram at DYL5445. You can find Dylan on Facebook at Dylan Kelley. That's Kelley. Look for him there, and look for a lot of good things for him in the future. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us, Dylan.
Thank you for having me.